meeting is being recorded.
Experiencing significant stress and anxiety due to COVID-19. And I really love this graphic because it really highlights the ways that anxiety and stress can show up as other things. So, for example, parents may start to notice that their children or they themselves are more easily angered than they were before, or that they may sort of become emotionally dysregulated almost out of nowhere over something seemingly minor, when in reality, kind of underneath that, there may be some worries and stress related to health of their family or what's going to happen, when can I go back to school, all kinds of those different sorts of worries. Another way that parents may notice changes in their children is in their behavior. And this can look a variety of different ways. So one thing may be an increase in children's defiance. And parents may think this is just sort of garden variety defiance, but where is it coming from? One thing may be that children are trying to exert more control in certain situations where they don't really have control right now. And so that's coming out as really, when being asked to do something, they're really saying more of no or not following directions. But it's really kind of help the child maybe really trying to hang on to the fact that this is a situation where I can try to exert some control. On the flip side of that, there are other children who may kind of be in this sort of over planning space where they're trying to have as much control and plan out seemingly really small situations, but in a way that helps them to feel like they know what to expect next. And still other kids may be really avoiding engaging with family, avoiding doing certain tasks because maybe doing those things brings up a lot of anxiety. And these are all behaviors and emotions that adults may be experiencing too. So this is not just unique necessarily to children. Other ways that we know that people may respond to disease outbreaks, like the one that we're all going through, is changes in sleep and eating patterns, difficulty concentrating, increased somatic complaints. So we may hear children talking more about headaches and stomach aches. And we also may see kids regress to doing things that they haven't done in some time. The common ones I think about are, for a kid who's been potty trained for some time, all of a sudden having nighttime or daytime accidents, or for kids who've been sleeping independently in their own bed for some time, all of a sudden wanting to seek sort of the comfort and closeness with their parents, or trying to sleep in bed with their parents, whereas that hasn't been an issue or something that's been of concern for some time. So there's a lot of different ways that the stress and worries that families may be experiencing due to the coronavirus may be manifesting themselves. Recently, so some researchers at the University of Michigan conducted a survey of parents nationally. And I thought I have a couple slides I wanted to just share with you some of the findings from the survey, because I think it does a nice job of
the series, and obviously now it's the phenomenon for you.
It does a nice job of setting the context for what our families and maybe many of us are experiencing as parents ourselves. So this was a survey of 288 parents, and it was launched March 24th, so about a week after the guidance came out from the White House about social distancing. And some of the main things that came out, so there was, I think, about 600 total participants, but 288 of those were parents with at least one child. And parents were asked about different aspects of their parenting in the prior 2 weeks. So parents reported things like they were spending more time doing activities with their children, and you can see in this figure, so some of those things, 68% participants reported playing games with their children. 63% reported engaging in educational activities. As we know, our families are being asked to not just be parents, but also to be teachers during this time. But parents also are experiencing significant stress and worries. So many reported that they were often or sometimes having worries that were getting in the way of their parenting, and these could be things about finances or things about the well-being of their own families. We also found that this study also showed that parents were reporting some sadness that was making it harder for them to care for their children, and loneliness getting in the way of parenting, really. So I think it's just important to acknowledge that there's a lot of stress that families are under, and that it's impacting them individually, but it's also impacting their ability to connect with and do what they need to do to care for their families. This study also looked at and asked parents about discipline practices. And so, as you can see in figure 4, a number of parents were reporting that at least once in the past 2 weeks, which was sort of the frame for this survey, they had taken privileges away from their child. Also, 61% reported that they had shouted, yelled, or screamed at their child. Another, I think, close to 60% had put their child in timeout at least once, and about 20% reported that they had spanked or slapped their child. And when parents were asked if these strategies were an increase compared to what they were doing before, parents reported they were like 25% of the parents participated reported they were having more conflicts with their children. 19% were yelling and screaming at their children more often than they had before. Some were having more harsh words, and about 5% reported that they were spanking or hitting their child more often. So I share these statistics just to lay sort of the foundation for the fact that all of the families that we are working with are under significant stress, and it's affecting the way that they are interacting with their children. This survey also was able to gather some qualitative feedback from parents about what it's like to parent during the coronavirus. So I just wanted to kind of share a few of these with you. So for example, one parent noted that my kids are confused. They don't understand fully the dangers of a pandemic. They want to play with their friends, and they're getting annoyed with the same routine at home and playing only with each other. And we are also rationing food and household items, and they are anxious and scared by that. I can see it in their faces, and they're volunteering to make sacrifices for us. So kids are also noticing that their parents' emotions are different, that their parents are more worried or they're behaving in different ways, and then that is kind of rubbing off on how the children are feeling. Another parent just mentioned feeling lost at the fact that she's now responsible for 1/3 of the school year's education. And others report that one, I felt somewhat distant, even though I've been spending more time with my kids than ever. So we can see that this is affecting parents in a number of different ways. So I just wanted to lay some of that information as the groundwork, and now I want to kind of transition and talk about some of the ways that we can support families. And so this first slide here is just to talk about the things that we can really kind of say to families to convey that our support to them. So as you all know, parenting is hard under any circumstances, and there is no such thing as a perfect parent. But now lay on top of it that parents are being asked to be parents, teachers, and to do their jobs all at the same time, often with, no increase in the number of hours in the day, no increase in the number of resources they have at their disposal. So really coming from having kind of maybe some split between the part of the day when you're doing parenting, the part of the day you're doing your job, to all of those things being together. It's really asking a whole lot of parents. And so we just want to, first of all, be really validating to parents that it's okay to feel anxious or worried or angry or lonely right now, and to remind parents that they aren't alone in these feelings. So there are many people around the nation who are sharing the same worries, concerns that this parent is. We also want to really give parents a whole lot of support and credit for any efforts they're making to keep their families safe, healthy, and happy. This is not an easy time, and we know that parents are really doing the best that they can. Another kind of important part, and we will be sharing a link to this resource. The AAP shared some guidance on kind of how to support parents in keeping their children busy during this extraordinary time. And one of the things that this guidance talked about is really helping parents to let themselves off the hook for the fact that children are going to be exposed to screens more than usual. That's inevitable. But what the guidance also talks a little bit about, and I think this is a really important point, is encouraging parents to be selective about the content that their children are being exposed to, and to trying to co-view any content with their children when that's possible. But again, really helping parents to feel like, don't stress about the fact that your children may be exposed to media more. That's maybe a necessary thing to help you kind of get through parenting and working and teaching them all at the same time. So now I want to shift and talk about some kind of specific strategies in thinking about how to help families during this stressful time. Routines are hugely important. So these are behaviors that are regularly practiced. They can be things like reading a story before bed, eating dinner together, but can also include things in the beginning of the day, like what's the, brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, getting dressed, eating breakfast. Those are all helpful routines that help children, get their day started on the right foot. And why are routines important? Well, one thing we know is that routines help children to feel safe and in control of their lives, and they can also be helpful in reducing stress. And so routines are helpful anytime, but they can be particularly helpful in a crisis situation. And of course, that also is when routines are disrupted, as right now, right? So many families, children are used to spending half of their day at school, and now they're spending all of their day at home. And some of that time is involved in school, but school looks different. And so their routines are completely different, or in some cases, maybe non-existent. So I wanted to share a couple resources that may be helpful to share with your families and kind of putting together a routine for their day. I really like this link here because it's about creating a flexible daily schedule. And that kind of gives, some makes it a little bit easier for families to keep a general routine, but to know that this may change throughout the week. And the other thing I really like about this resource, and we've included the link at the bottom of the page, is that you can get the child involved because it's flexible. The child and the parent could work together to select what the activities are, routines are for each part of the day. So there's some opportunity for the child to have a say in what are the routines that they want to make sure happen, or what are the activities they want to make sure get put into the routine for that particular day. Here is another related resource to that, just some different ideas for the types of routines that parents want to make sure they kind of get into that daily schedule. These include self-care things like brushing teeth and getting dressed in the morning. These also include learning activities, which is going to look different for children of different ages. This also includes physical activities like riding bikes or sidewalk chalk, obviously, kind of keeping some of the things in mind about access to resources and where families are are the children able to go outside where they're living, etc. as well as things that are contributing to the whole household. So there's just some nice different examples, different sort of categories of activities that can be built into that daily schedule. Another thing that's really, another tip that's really helpful for families at any time, but particularly during this sort of extraordinary time, is spending child-centered time together. And child-centered time is time that parents spend with their child focused on their child's interests, where their child really gets to take the lead. So this can take any number of forms, and it can be as brief as 10 to 15 minutes a day, but it's so important because it helps children to bond with their parents, to feel that love and warmth, but also it helps children, because they're able to take the lead in whatever the activity is, it helps foster a positive self-esteem and self-confidence. And because children are getting this sort of proactive attention while they're doing something that their parent wants them to be doing more and more of, it reduces the chances that children are going to engage in negative attention-seeking behavior we know often happen, because children of all ages want parents' attention, and they'll do it whether it's positive or negative, but that definitely is a major thing that they seek out. So kind of helping parents to think about and recognize the importance of spending this child-centered time with their children each day. This can take the form of one-on-one time, but it also, we recognize that children or parents have multiple children, and finding ways to engage in kind of child-centered activities that involve all the kids at one time. So taking turns with who picks the activity or who takes the lead in that activity, but still allowing everybody in the family to be involved. So this next slide, just wanted to share some specific possible ways to spend child-centered time with children of different ages. So with babies and toddlers, this may be telling a story or reading a book, singing songs to them, or making music with pots and pans. With sort of younger children, but older than babies or toddlers, it could also be dancing to music or singing songs together, getting the kids involved in preparing a meal so they feel they feel that kind of responsibility. They see mom or dad doing the cooking, they want to kind of be involved. And that's also a way that allows mom or dad to get that necessary task done of preparing a meal, but the kid gets to have some, role in that, and that can help really build their self-esteem. With older children and teenagers, sometimes just spending 10 minutes just talking with them, and they get to pick what the topic is about, or doing something active together, or connecting with family and friends over social media, playing games together. All of these are different ways, and there are probably can probably think of lots of other ways that families can spend that child-centered time together. But I think the thing that's so helpful is to help families think about how to make everyday activities child-centered, so that it doesn't feel like one more thing that we're encouraging our parents to do with their children. This next slide, so I want to tie back to what we were talking about regarding safe screen time, or kind of helping parents to control what their children are exposed to. So this includes a number of different links to websites that have both online and suggestions for offline activities for children. So we've included links to reading activities, math and science activities. We've also included links to activities to help children stay active, both kind of exercise type things. There's also some mindfulness and yoga resources. And Sesame Street has a really nice link on their page around helping children through emergencies or times like we are going through right now. And so that's another link that we've included. And we will be sharing all of these links with you through some handouts that we'll be providing after the presentation. The last sort of kind of category of tips that we want to share and encourage you to share with your families is around self-care. So encouraging parents to limit their children's exposure to news and media, because that obviously can foster anxiety and lots of questions about what is going on, but also for parents to be mindful about limiting their own exposure. Because as we all are probably aware, there's lots of information overload happening right now. And so trying to put a cutoff on when enough is enough for a day. But the other thing that's important in this time when we're all isolating from each other is to try to find ways for parents and for their children to maintain connections with other family members and friends, whether that's by phone or email or Zoom, taking pictures and sharing them with their friends so that we can still feel connected to other people. And then the third point here I just want to make is about taking time, taking a break to breathe and relax. And we've included two kind of brief breathing or kind of mindfulness strategies in here. This first one, called Take a Pause, comes from the CDC. So 1 minute relaxation activity that parents and children can do wherever they are. So it just kind of walks through making sure that they're in a comfortable sitting position, they're closing their eyes, they're spending that time kind of having some awareness of what are they thinking about right now and noticing how they're feeling, and focusing on breathing and just really taking that 1 minute to close off all the other stress and things that are kind of going on and just trying to refocus on themselves. So this is sort of one option. And the other option that we wanted to talk about is the Take 5 breathing break, which I really like and think children as well as adults may find accessible. So the notion here is so you use your hand as kind of a way to orient the breathing. So every time that you spread your 5 fingers out just like this. I'm not sure if this is showing up on video or not. You breathe in when you bring your finger up, and then you breathe out when you go down. And it's really just a way, so it takes a few minutes to get through all of this, but just helping the child and the parent orient just to paying attention to their breath. So like I said, breathe in when you bring your finger up to the top of your hand, and then breathe out as you bring it down the other side of each finger, and going through all 5 fingers. Just a nice way that's accessible, nice relaxation break that's accessible for both parents and children. So I wanted to share that with you all. The other thing we just wanted to remind you is that BHIPP is open and available to provide support to primary care providers during COVID-19. So we're accessible by the phone number that's shown right there for consultation, as well as help identifying resources and referrals for families. We've also included a link to our monthly newsletter where we share a lot of different tips about managing mental health issues that present in primary care. And we recently, our most recent newsletter focused on resources and tips related to COVID-19. So really encourage you to connect with us, reach out, and we're available to provide support. The other thing I wanted to mention, so this is the first in our series of BHIPP resilience breaks. We have 2 more of these planned at this point. The first one is, or the next one will be May 14th, and the focus will be on talking to kids about COVID-19. And then Then the next one will be on June 11th, and that will be focusing on provider resiliency, as I know that we're all working really hard to support the children and families that we see, but it's also really important to be taking care of ourselves during this extremely stressful time. So here is just more information about those upcoming dates, and there may be additional dates and topics to follow as things continue to evolve. So what we'd like to do now is kind of shift to some discussion with you all, and we'll primarily use the chat for this, but want to encourage you to kind of bring your questions and things that you are seeing or struggling with. So the first question that we wanted to put out to the group is, what are you noticing about how the families you work with are adjusting to the new home and school structure? So Kelly, do you think should we go through all of these, or shall we wait and take responses to each one first?
Well, folks can certainly see the 3 questions on the screen in front of you. It probably makes sense to take them one at a time, but if you have a case you sort of want to share or a success you want to jump to in the chat, please feel free to jump ahead. Due to the size of the group, we have about 70 people on. We are going to use the chat, and then Chelsea, Jamie, and myself will moderate comments and questions through the chat feature. So we'll use that primarily, and then folks could maybe unmute as needed, but we don't want everybody talking at once. So feel free to use the chat. I will just mention Jamie has been really active in the chat, so while folks maybe add comments or questions, if you haven't opened the chat, again, you can hover on the bottom and see the 3rd icon from the right that looks like a talk bubble, and open it. It'll open on the right side of your screen. There have been a lot of links that Jamie has shared throughout that correspond to the content Amy has presented. So you certainly can open them now on your computer to download or save the PDF. We'll also make those available to you afterwards, and they will be saved on our website, available there ongoing. So if you don't access them now, they'll certainly be available to you. And the recording will also be archived within a few days and available on our website. So if you wanted to share any part of this with a colleague or revisit it, that will be available too. That was a question that someone did type in to ask if they could share that with a colleague.
Wonderful.
So Erin is has commented about kids initially seeming to be doing well, liking to have a break from school. I know we've seen that in our clinics too, kind of a honeymoon period, but now seem to be struggling as they miss friends and normal activity. My anxious kids who, quote, begged to be homeschooled previously are now, quote, begging to go back to school. So I do wonder if other folks want to chat, or you could certainly indicate if if somebody wants to open up the line and comment, feel free to do that. If folks have had successes supporting families or suggestions about how you're supporting families during this time. Another participant is adding that a student even has said she missed a teacher that she didn't like. I think that really speaks to the rituals and routines and real structure. I think that kids find in school that's missing now. I certainly know in my own home that's true. I think my kids are missing that a great deal. We all are. Amy, so someone is asking if there's any tips on maintaining healthy sleep routines for kids, especially older middle school and teenagers. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Sure, happy to. I think that is a really important point to be thinking about. I've been hearing a lot in my own practice about teenagers taking kind of this opportunity to stay up later and sleep in more because they don't have the school structure, but then parents worrying about are the kids getting too much sleep or not getting the right kind of sleep? So trying to encourage families, even though they may not have to be up, especially families with older children, even though they may not need to be up for that early school schedule, to try to keep some kind of consistent bedtime and wake time. Because when we sort of let that flux, that's where we start to see that increase in children having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or sleeping too much. And I think, sometimes those can also be signs of a different issue around children's anxiety or depression. But I do think trying to help families try to keep a consistent sleep routine for their young children all the way up through their teenagers, um, to try to promote kind of that good sleep hygiene. Do other people have suggestions about how to promote good sleep in the families that or the children of families that they work with?
Amy, this is Kelly, and I'm keeping an eye on the chat for other suggestions. I don't think I have a magic bullet for this, but I think some struggles are also around sort of the screen time. I think
Absolutely.
while loosening screen time restrictions are something we all have to, I think both as providers and parents have to be flexible about and give ourselves and families we work with a lot of grace, and kids too. That it is so easy to slip into also unhealthy kind of screen time use right now. So finding kind of a balance and a way to work with that. And then also, I think it's very easy to just be pretty inactive right now. I mean, it's easy to stay inside because we're being told to stay inside.
Right.
And so especially for families, I think, who are living somewhere where there really aren't good ways to be socially distant and be outside and active, that I think we can get into cycles where we're sort of not getting outside, we're not being active, we're just not as tired, maybe us or families. So I think thinking kind of problem solving some of those things, like how can we have a healthy routine? How can we kind of do something each day to change our scenery, to move around, to get up and get dressed and get outside? But there are some real barriers right now to that. So also being mindful of those things. I see that Loretta from the Maryland chapter of the AAP shared a family media plan with us. So that's popped up in their resources. Erin from Annapolis Peds also shared a suggestion about maybe coming up with a strategy also with kids' friends, parents, to make a technology turn-off pact. So maybe everybody's on the same page. So that's a great suggestion.
I think that's pointing out a really good point, because I think especially with teenagers, if they're feeling like, well, my friends don't have to go to bed at this time, or they're still getting contact from those other peers, that's going to make it harder for them to, separate from technology. And so having that kind of agreed upon turn off, putting all the technology in one place so kids don't have access to their phone when they're getting into bed. So different kinds of rules like that may also help.
I'm scanning for all our sleep-related comments because I don't want to miss. I see Cynthia saying, I've been working with families about expectations for sleep because now they're not as active. So we touched on that a bit, and teens don't have to be to bed at 10. I do think that's a challenge that kids have a lot of different school expectations right now. So some schools are maintaining a pretty standard schedule, other schools don't. You just have to kind of check in or just do your worksheets. There are a lot of changing demands.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to pop back up in the order. Amy, did you have another comment? I want to be sure we're not missing some of these questions.
No, go ahead and just check in and see if I want to make sure we're not missing anything too.
So Sue had a sort of comment or concern. She says being school-based is concerned about reaching out to families and developing a new mode of relationships. And I think a couple related comments. So Cynthia, and then I think Sarah from Main Street Peds also. So I think these kind of lump together about being concerned that we're reaching families who might need it the most stressed out families, kind of the families that need the most engagement or connection. So being sure those kids stay engaged with their teachers, or that we're connecting with those folks who might be the most supportive adults in their lives.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like some folks are looking for some ideas for how to stay connected to those families that they're most concerned about. And
I think that might be, yeah, a general kind of theme. So if folks have suggestions around that, or Amy, if you want to comment on that.
I mean, just in terms of my own practice, we're using Zoom for most of our therapy appointments, and I've been impressed with families' ability to navigate that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be interested in checking in for too long, but I think a lot of families have been really responsive to either wanting to meet briefly by video, or even just to have a brief phone call to check in. I think they appreciate appreciate our concern for them, but also that ability to just touch base, even if they might initially say, no, everything's fine. But, just knowing that we're concerned and want to make sure that they're doing okay. But there are also maybe other kind of mediums for trying to check in with families. I don't know if practices are sending any, like if you're able to send things to families by email, or if you have a practice Facebook or Twitter that you can post kind of little tips or anything to families, so they're feeling connected and know that you're there and you're thinking about them. I know, probably in situations like I'm thinking about school systems where we would have naturally done like a home visit, that, obviously is not necessarily possible, but are there ways that we can do that kind of using other technology, but also respecting the fact that families may not have, access to stable internet, or not everybody has a smartphone. So what are the ways that we can kind of stay connected to each other, but also respecting that social distance? And I'd say this is a tough one. So I'd be interested if folks have other ideas.
So somebody did comment on the chat. Callaway is the handle. I don't know that I'm getting your name correct, so I apologize. But in responding to Sarah from Main Street Pediatrics around teacher availability, so I do think an opportunity is to sort of brainstorm with parents about what the county is offering. So this is going to vary by county, but what this response indicates sounds similar to what I know Baltimore County is doing, where a lot of teachers have office hours. Mm-hmm. They're available to work with families. So I think that is one option. And most school social workers or school counselors also are still working and have those similar office hours where they can connect with kids. Mm-hmm. So it would be worth knowing what that is in your county or jurisdiction. And then I know we have a number of folks on here from Head Start or similar programs. So if you're one of those folks, you might want to chime in, if you don't mind, and let us know what kind of services your program is still providing, because that might be helpful to the primary care folks. And then Jamie, so we recently shared on our Twitter page that there's now a 24-hour parenting helpline. I think the Family Tree is running this. So Jamie, if you could maybe link that up, but I think that's a resource that parents could call to get some support. Oh, Jamie, wow, that was very quick. Jamie just put it in the chat. So I do think, I especially think about parents who have a lot of stress, or, a lot of psychosocial stressors, and also parents of new babies who are all of a sudden finding themselves at home and unable to even, get out and walk around or kind of just drive around. It's so important to be able to get out of the house and just kind of change the scenery. So finding those kind of resources, I think, can be really helpful. So if folks have ideas about that, I know Head Start folks are really resourceful. Please share with us any ideas you have. But school counselors and social workers are still working. Teachers have developed office hours. They've been real heroes, I think, during this time, and coming up with creative strategies. And if we learn of new resources, we will share them on our website and in our newsletter and our our little meager Twitter feed, which is, small but mighty. So we'll continue to put out resources as we learn about them.
Wonderful.
Oh, and Erin has shared another resource, doxy.me can send text links directly to a smartphone for a quick virtual check-in. She says it's free, you do not need a computer. Most people have smartphones. There's also Doximity that offers a phone call to patients without using your cell phone number.
That's great.
Thanks, Erin.
I've also heard of people using Google Hangout. I'm not sure if that is a free service or not, but as another way, another alternative to something like Zoom that would allow you to connect with families by video or by phone. And I know a number of the colleagues that I work with in the school system in the Baltimore school system are trying to think about ways to hold parent groups virtually. And we're doing the same thing at Kennedy Krieger. We're transitioning from an in-person group to try to do parent groups over Zoom as just a way to help parents stay connected to each other and to get some additional support and strategies during this stressful time.
Other challenges folks are encountering, or certainly we would love to hear about successes or signs of resilience that folks are seeing among the kids and families that you serve. So we will keep the chat open, and Amy and I certainly can be available. I see Amy, not Amy Betancourt, but Amy has signed in and says that her agency is using Google Meet, Hangouts, and Duo if a patient doesn't have a smartphone, or making phone calls, and teachers are mailing out work for students who don't have internet access. So I think this is an example of lots of creative solutions. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah. I know I've heard some talking about doing drop-offs to families, so doing a home visit, but like a contact list home visit. So if there are, bringing things to families, but not specifically interacting with them. I know that obviously still is tricky in terms of being out in the community, but trying to maintain social distancing while getting those resources to families is important.
And here's another comment about success using telemedicine, especially with teenagers. And I think that's true, and a lot of the regulations around telemedicine right now have been relaxed, at least temporarily. So I think that's a solution that certainly folks are exploring more and more, and helps to bridge the gap while folks are staying home and distancing. And also a recommendation to use headphones to help with privacy. That's a great suggestion. And I do think teens are just really pretty savvy with technology, have a lot of the equipment they need, which makes them good candidates for that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I appreciate everyone's comments. We certainly are still available, but I also respect that everyone is quite busy in some ways, I think more than other in new ways. So please, we encourage you to fill out our short evaluation. It helps us learn how to improve what we offer, and certainly will inform the upcoming series of resilience breaks and other web-based, and when we get back to in-person trainings that we offer. So if folks have additional comments or questions, we'll hang around for a couple more minutes. And of course, you can always email us or call the line, and we're happy to answer questions related to patients that you're seeing, or other questions specifically. So we look forward to talking with you and connecting in lots of ways. Thanks, guys, for taking the time today.
The other thing I just wanted to mention quickly is that once you complete your evaluations, then you'll receive a certificate, because this is a CME and CEU bearing event. So make sure that you fill out your survey so that we both can learn how to improve what we're offering for you, and also so that you can get that certificate for your continuing education. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time with us, and thank you for all that you are doing in this extraordinary time to support the families that you're working with. We so appreciate you.
Thanks all.